everybody, my name's Kylie, I read a lot, and today's video is going to be a little bit different of a video. My friend and I not too long ago went book shopping at Target, and she picked out a book that she said, "Oh, I read this, I think you would like it." I am really big into thrillers. I have been for quite some time, and last year I think almost half of my books ended up being thriller books. Behind me to my right, this is like my thriller / horror shelf, so considering the fact I have a whole shelf dedicated to thrillers means I probably know a thing or two about thrillers. And the other day my friend came over and she was like, "Wow, you haven't read this book yet, have you?" So I picked it up because she called me out. I went into this book completely blind, and around page 40 I realized that I have heard this story before. I was sitting there wondering why I knew this story, where I've heard it from. And I realized that not only did I know this story, it's a real life case. The book I'm talking about is All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. Like I said, I went into this book blind. I didn't even know who this author was. I couldn't even tell you the author's name when I started the book. And so I went to the back and found out from the back of the book that Ashley Flowers is actually a famous podcaster. And you may know her podcast. She's the Crime Junkies podcast. I'd actually never listened to the Crime Junkie podcast. So I did what anybody else would do. I went to the internet to see if I was the only one thinking this, if this book was inspired by this case. Reddit post from 2 years ago popped up, and it was actually on the Crime Junkies subreddit, and I was asking the same thing, that they saw similarities between this book and the case. Start by saying all of the next things that I talk about are my thoughts and opinions, and everything I say is alleged. I'm not the person you should go to for true crime and getting this story, but I am going to talk about the case in this video, and it does involve a 6-year-old girl, and it is very, very sad, very tragic. And because of that, I would like everybody to know that, like, if you are uncomfortable with that, I completely understand if you click off this video, considering like this is something that actually happened in real life. I'm going to spend most of this video talking about the actual book, but I think for the sense of this video, we do need to go over the case that I knew that this book was from. So the Reddit post I pulled up was on the Crime Junkie podcast subreddit, and it said, "All good people here too similar to John Ramsey case. Just listen to the first episode of My Favorite Murder, and about 30 minutes into they start talking about the John Ramsey case, and wow, it is eerily similar to the book and makes me wonder if this story was ripped off at all. 6-year-old girl murdered. It looks staged by the parents. Daughter was a pageant child, had a brother they claimed was asleep and she died, but evidence proves otherwise. She had blunt force trauma, but ultimately died of strangulation. Like, everything rings a bell. I'm so annoyed right now." That is the subreddit post, and as soon as I saw that, I knew that I was not the only one in the same beliefs. This book was eerily similar to the JonBenét Ramsey case. I'm going to go over much of the actual case itself and much of the details, but I am going to go over the details that you need to know for the case to understand why it is eerily similar to the actual book. JonBenét Ramsey was a pageant queen, a little pageant queen. If you've ever seen the show Toddlers and Tiaras, that was her. She was 6 years old and very into pageants. Her mom, Patsy Ramsey, was an American Beauty pageant person as well, and she actually won different beauty pageants. I'm not sure the exact one, but a lot of people say that JonBenét was her little pageant star. She saw herself within her daughter and made her like a little mini me, and there's videos and quotes of her saying that yes, she was, I was a pageant mom, yada yada. And on December 26, 1996, fortunately her body was found in the basement of her family home, and she was no longer alive. The story goes, in the morning, her mom called the cops, said that she found a ransom note, her daughter's missing, they can't find her. They were supposed to leave on a trip that day to see her dad, John Ramsey's older kids, for like a second Christmas kind of thing. And so in the note, it says, "Don't call the police, pull out this much money." They immediately called the police arrive, and then, unfortunately speaking, her body was found in their parents' basement. However, there was no sign of forced entry in the house. Ransom note was written on paper that was found in the Ramsey house. To know about this is JonBenét had an older brother that was 9 years old, and his name, Burke Ramsey, and it is shown in several videos and shown in several podcasts that he was just different. He was odd. He was just not your normal child, I would guess. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean, but that's what they say. That being said, we are 40 pages into all good people here. So to start, we're following this girl named Margot. She's moving back to her hometown because her uncle getting early onset signs of dementia, and when she was 6 years old, her friend across the street was murdered. And the friend across the street that was murdered was named January. She had a twin brother, but a brother, and they never found who killed January. January was found in the basement. At first, there were signs of blunt force trauma to the head, and then they realized later on that there was strangulation involved. They don't know who killed the daughter, yada, 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 whatever. So you have January, and you have JonBenét. So here's what we know about JonBenét. Kind of a unique J name. She has an older brother who's kind of odd. Her mom was a pageant queen, was unalived in her house, and found in her basement. They don't know who did it. In the book, you have a girl named January. She's 6 years old. She's unalived in her house, found in the basement. They don't know who did it. Blunt force trauma. In the book, she's a dancer, and her mom was a dancer as well and wanted to be a famous rockette. Now, I was sitting there thinking, okay, maybe, like, this is just coincidence, you know? But as I did further research into Ashley Flowers herself, I realized, like, there's too much in this book to just be coincidence. For about half of the book, I really felt like I was reading a book based on JonBenét Ramsey's case. Within the book, as it goes on, everybody that was a main suspect in the JonBenét Ramsey case became a main suspect in the book as well. At one point, you think the dad did it. At one point, you think the mom did it. At one point, you think the brother did it. And at one point, you think it was some outside person that did it, which is wild. I did some more digging to see if this, again, was a popular theory amongst the people that have read the book, and I watched some YouTube videos based on the book. Same consensus kind of comes up that a lot of people believe that this book, I don't want to say ripped off, but I do want to say inspired, I guess, by JonBenét Ramsey's case. And go on to Goodreads to see the same thing. A lot of the posts on Goodreads and a lot of the reviews kind of say the same thing. Now, objectively speaking, I don't think the writing in this book is bad. I actually think it's pretty good. It kept me captivated, but I had to sit there and I had to wonder, am I captivated because I know this story already, or am I captivated because of the writing? And I think it has to be a little bit of both, but I still think it's very interesting that there's so much in this book that is a part of the JonBenét Ramsey case. Why is it nowhere on the book, nowhere, anywhere does the author say she was inspired by that case? I watched it of her going on tour and like promoting the book, and she talks about her podcast and what they do and how they help. And I'm going to say this right now. I've not seen a full podcast episode from her and her podcast. I don't even know who her co-host is. I did a quick search, and there are several videos she's made on her podcast about the JonBenét Ramsey case. I went on TikTok and I searched up the Crime Junkie podcast, and within one small little swipe, there's 3 videos about the JonBenét Ramsey case. Mind you, this book came out 2 years ago, so this has been going on. And I would like to say that she also interviewed the dad of JonBenét Ramsey.
Of interviews over the years, and my main reason for engaging the media is to keep pressure on the police to do their job.
Now, when she went on NBC this morning, she said that she's had this story in her mind for years.
Now I had this story just living in me, honestly, for years that I had to get on paper that I feel like everyone's gonna love.
And she's wanted to write it, and she finally did. I don't want to like just make claims and whatnot and give my opinion about something that isn't true, but I haven't seen anywhere that she talks about being inspired by the JonBenét Ramsey case for this book, which is very, very odd because it is, objectively speaking, very similar to the case. I would have read this book, searched up the author. The author wasn't a true crime podcaster, didn't have much to do with true crime, then I would have probably still made the connections to the JonBenét Ramsey case, but I would have probably just let it go. But the fact that this author has done so many videos, I don't want to say like fascinated by this case because I feel like fascinated is like not the right word to use here, but it almost feels like she's fascinated by this case. And there is some sort of, again, not obsession, but there is something about this case that piques her interest quite a bit, considering the fact she interviewed the dad of the daughter that passed away. I did watch a little bit of that interview, and in the interview, like, I watched about 5 minutes of that interview, and within that first 5 minutes, he talks about how he still wants to get media attention and how he's still doing all of these interviews because they don't have somebody convicted for her murder. Now, here are my opinions, okay? I'm sure that this has happened in several other books. This is just the only one that I know, the JonBenét Ramsey case, because when I was 12, I had a true crime phase. I was watching a lot of true crime videos. Anybody who is anybody in true crime, I feel, has done a video about the JonBenét Ramsey case. It is so popular and it is so intriguing, I guess, because they never convicted anybody for the crime, and there are so many theories out there being said. She has links to the JonBenét Ramsey case, considering the fact that she did interview the dad. There are so many parallels in this book. She also talks about in this book, the police pull out a photo of January and they kind of make a face because she is all done up and she looks older than she does. And one of the main points about the JonBenét case was with her doing pageants is they do a lot of makeup, they have hair pieces, and a lot of people, even FBI detectives, thought she was older because of this.
Faxed a photo of JonBenét.
I was kind of flabbergasted. My initial impression was this is a much older girl.
Why would you draw all these parallels? Why would you do all this? To not say you were inspired, at least, by the case. Because in my opinion, I feel like if you would have said somewhere that you were inspired by the JonBenét Ramsey case, you could do what the father wanted and get more media attention to that case. Objectively speaking, like I said, this book is still pretty good. The writing isn't awful. And as thrillers go, like, it was captivating. It was a page turner. To sit there and say that you've had this story in your head for a long time, it's probably true. You probably did have that story in your head for a long time, but is it because it's already a story that's happened? It's a real life event? It does pose the question to other authors of, is it, first of all, morally right to write a fiction book based off of a real traumatic true crime case over a little girl who lost her life and not say anything that you pulled those parallels from it? I understand the counter argument where, since there was no ever a convicted person for the crime against JonBenét Ramsey, that you want to portray it wrong, considering the fact that, like, halfway through the book it goes down different than, like, what we know about the JonBenét case. But still, think to say, like, you were inspired by the story would be something. You were inspired to write this book would be something. And I know this isn't the only case of this happening. Personally, this is the only one that I've read where I knew the case that the story was involved about, but I don't want to say I'm accusing this author of anything, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she did have this in her head. Maybe she doesn't think that she quote unquote ripped off the JonBenét Ramsey case at all. But what I do want to say is that I think it's odd. I think there's too much that lines up for it to be just coincidence. And I think it poses a bigger question of authors doing this and getting away with it, and, like, it's not, and not giving quote unquote credit where credit is due. I would definitely like to know your thoughts on this book. It's a little bit of a different video that I'm filming today, and I would like to know your thoughts about this video, and if you would, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. I worked really hard, did a lot of research, so let me know, and I will see you in the next video.